jungle.
Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. Today is June 3rd, 2018. I am your co-host, Bobby Hester, and I am going to be doing the show solo today because our normal host, Enzo Quesada, he's very, very busy this week doing some things. So, thankfully, this wasn't a week that was filled with a bunch of news, but still, you know, there's some good stuff in here, and we're going to go over it today in the show. Now, the one thing I do want to say before we begin is the 2018 election section of the show, where we like to break down the different races that are in the upcoming primaries that are happening this week. That's going to be a very big portion of today's show, probably going to be maybe like almost half the show. There's a lot of stuff in there, and we really don't have too much news outside of that. So for one time only, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that portion to the end of the program, and we're going to go ahead and just do the rest of the news the way we do it. So if you're someone who doesn't want to listen to a bunch of primary talk about different candidates and who they are and where they're running and stuff like that, that's going to be at the end of the show. So if you want to just go ahead and listen to the beginning of the show and then cut off, that is fine. Or you should probably just go ahead and listen to the entire thing, because it's really good to know exactly who these people are that are running for office, because in case they win, they're going to have control over us, and their votes matter in terms of things that affect our lives. So that's going to be at the end of the show. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start this thing. Thank you for listening to Trump Republic Radio. Let's go. So the first thing that we have up is Trump has signed into law a right to try bill. He did this on Wednesday in the Oval Office, and he signed into law a bill that would allow those with potentially terminal diseases to try experimental treatments and then therefore bypass the Food and Drug Administration. The bill was referred to as the Right to Try Act of 2017 and was sponsored by Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. He's a Republican. It passed unanimously in the Senate last August and passed in the House only along party lines. Trump has touted the bill as a big win for the people, adding that he, quote, couldn't care less about the pharmaceutical and insurance companies. So, you know, my thoughts on this is, you know, just thinking back to kind of my old libertarian days, you know, I kind of have always had this thought that for the most part, people should have a right to do with their bodies whatever they want to do, you know, within reason. And I definitely think that if you're a person who has a terminal disease and there exists some sort of medication, even if it hasn't been cleared, you should have a right to try it. You know, even if it doesn't work and you end up dying from whatever disease, you're probably going to die anyways. That's why they call it a terminal disease, especially if you've had it and you don't have long to live. Why not take a shot at it? If it can prolong your life for even a little bit, is that not worth it? You know, people always say, oh, you know, the right only cares about, you know, life before they were born, not after they were born. Well, here is us directly caring about the right of people. You know, people's lives, people's right to live. If they want to be able to try this medication, whether or not it actually works, they should have the right to do that. So, you know, Senator Johnson, I thank you. Every person in the Senate and the House that passed this bill, I thank you. President Trump, thank you for signing this into law. And although this doesn't affect me or anyone I know, there's going to be at least someone out there who's going to try some sort of new medication that hasn't been cleared, and it's going to help them, and they're going to get better. And to them, I say, you're welcome, and thank you, President Trump. Moving on to the next story, this is the story that actually this episode is named after, which I thought it was kind of funny. So Kim Kardashian met with President Trump at the White House this week. On Wednesday, Kim Kardashian met with President Trump in the White House to discuss criminal justice reform. She also asked Trump to pardon an imprisoned first-time drug offender who has already served 21 years in prison. Now, apparently Kim Kardashian found out about this woman, or I think it was a woman, I'm fairly certain it was a woman, found out about this person via Twitter, and had been posting tweets and follow-ups about this person's story. I haven't read too much into it, but, you know, she thought it was important enough to bring it literally to the feet, in front of the face of the President of the United States. And so because of that, you know, Trump at least gave her the sit down. She let her discuss it. But, that's not the only thing that came out of this meeting. And what came out of this meeting, this Trump-Kim summit, if you will, is the fact that, if you remember just a few weeks ago is when Kanye West, her husband, was making all those headlines after he came out and, said, I like the way that Candace Owens thinks, and pretty much, became publicly pro-Trump. It set the left ablaze, it made the right freak out and be all happy about it. But Kim Kardashian herself hasn't really publicly stated anything in terms of, politics-wise, especially with her husband. When people were criticizing her husband, she never came out and said something along the lines of, I may disagree with my husband's politics, but please stop attacking him. No, she left it simply to the don't attack my husband. He's not a dumb person like you people think he is. He's a very smart man. He knows what he's doing. And so she stuck by Kanye West this entire time, and I want to say the fact that she was even willing to meet with President Trump probably means she supports Trump more so than people think she does, which is funny because, after she met with President Trump, so many of people that were on the left were criticizing her for meeting with Trump, which is hilarious, just the fact that all she has to do is just be seen with the guy, and people start attacking her, I would say from all sides, but most people from the conservative side of the aisle really probably don't care. It was mostly the left essentially eating their own. But that being said, there was one joke I saw on the internet which I thought was hilarious. I almost wanted to title the episode of the show this, but it's too long. So I'll just say it here. It's not the Trump-Kim summit that we wanted, but it's the one that we deserve. So, Kim Kardashian, thank you for making our lives ever so much more entertaining. Now, on to some more serious news. Trump has issued another presidential pardon, this time to Dinesh D'Souza. On Thursday, President Trump issued an official pardon to conservative author and filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza. D'Souza was convicted in 2014 for making an illegal campaign contribution when he donated $20,000 to a female New York politician. He was sentenced to 5 years probation and 8 months in a halfway house. D'Souza has always claimed that he was being treated unfairly by the Obama administration, which may or may not have been politically motivated. If you don't know who Dinesh D'Souza is, he is the author and director of some books, director of movies that is, but he's the director of the anti-Obama documentary called 2016, Obama's America, which was released in August 2012, just before the 2012 presidential election. And if you remember, he also, I think, had did he not, I believe, made the version of Clinton Cash, which was a book that was written by Peter Schweizer. I have a signed copy of that. I have met Dinesh D'Souza back in 2017, actually, just about a year ago. Actually a little bit over a year ago. It was in February of 2017. He spoke at a Lincoln Reagan dinner that I attended, so he was the guest speaker of that. Did not get to take a picture with him, but I did get to take a picture of him with a friend of mine. So, he's an okay guy. A lot of people on the right are like, they just fawn over him, especially older conservatives. People like me that are younger, I personally don't really care about Dinesh D'Souza. I mean, I guess he's all right. I definitely don't think he's, helping too much, although he does spread the message and a lot of people like him. So, I guess technically I would say he's on our side. He's on the pro-Trump side. So, you know what, D'Souza, thank you for what you've done. Thank you for the books that you've written. Thank you for the documentaries that you have released. Keep on keeping on, and now you don't have to worry about any more sentencing or halfway house time. I'm pretty sure he already finished that, though. But, that being said, I kind of actually have to agree with Dinesh D'Souza. When I was reading up on his case, he was treated extremely unfairly by the Obama administration. And, when you understand exactly who the type of guy that D'Souza is and who the type of guy that President Obama was and how he ran his government, yeah, I can tell it was definitely politically motivated. And luckily, that has been fixed now. But the last story that we have in terms of major news is a little update on the Mueller probe. Over the last couple of weeks, it seems like the Mueller probe has been kind of winding down a little bit because we obviously know that President Trump is innocent. There was no Russian collusion. There's no evidence of any Russian collusion. And At this point, the Mueller probe serves nothing more than to, get in the president's way, get in the administration's way, bog it down, and spend a bunch of money. And we have some updates on just how much money has actually been spent. So the Office of Special Counsel issued its biannual spending report this week, showing that they've spent $9.9 million during the period of October 1st, 2017 to March 31st, 2018. Now, during the first 6-month period, which was from May 17th, 2017 to September 1st, 2017, the Special Counsel's Office spent $6.7 million. Now, if you get your thinking cap on and you do the math, that totals to around $17 million that Robert Mueller's Office of Special Counsel has spent since he was appointed to that position. Now, if you want to know about how much more was spent in that second period than the first period, it's an increase of about 11%. Now, hopefully, as this Mueller probe begins to wind down here and ultimately end sometime around September or August, which is what Rudy Giuliani, Trump's new lawyer or friend or whatever his exact position is at this point, that's what he was suggesting. So hopefully it does. Obviously, the sooner the better, because we know nothing's going to come out of it. They'll probably indict some low-level people and charge them with some process crime or something like that, and then the left will use that as their narrative to be like, oh, see, it led to some indictments, but it's honestly not. Mueller needed to have been fired a long time ago, and it's a shame that he even still is around right now. But that being said, it's a money pot, and by money pot, I mean taking the money and flushing it all down the toilet, because $17 million, imagine how many people you could have fed with that much more money. Imagine how many people's college you could have paid for. The left always wants to talk about giving people free college, or making sure everyone has enough food to eat, but then here we are wasting this money on this never-ending Russian investigation probe that's going nowhere. These people are running our government, I swear. But that being said, that was really all the major news that we had this week in terms of top of the stack stuff. Now, there's a lot more to get to, but the next thing up is immigration. I'm sorry, not immigration. That's the next thing after this. But up next is economics. Now, the biggest, I could say, economic news story, which probably could have been one of the biggest stories of the week, and might have even been one of the biggest stories of the week, nothing really happened this week, is the Trump administration announced new tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. So the United States is placing a 25% tariff on steel imports and a 10% tariff on aluminum imports. Now, if you remember, we also kind of put tariffs on China and some other Asian countries, and that essentially is what got them to the table for renegotiation. We talked about the show, I believe it was either last week or the week prior, that China was finally opening up and getting rid of some of the tariffs that they had on car imports, which essentially meant that U.S. car manufacturers could ship into China a lot of times for the first time ever, but just, in a much, much stronger degree than they currently are doing right now. And so when a lot of people like to freak out and think, oh, the U.S. is getting into a trade war, oh no, we can't do this. We are already in a trade war, and we are losing a trade war. So many people talk about, oh, free market economics, why don't we just do it the free market way, free fair trade? And it's like, okay, you need to understand something. If other countries put tariffs on things that are exported from the United States and imported into that country, but then the United States does not place any tariffs on those same other types of products coming in from that country, that creates trade imbalances. And that creates a situation where they're putting a tariff on you, you're not putting a tariff on them. It becomes more expensive for you to export things than for you to import things. And so, that's kind of the reason that we did this in order to get with China. And so a lot of people are really misunderstanding the point of why we're putting new tariffs out there. A lot of this is just to get other people to the table so you can renegotiate other trade agreements or negotiate new trade agreements. But the EU announced that they will be introducing a countermeasure sometime in the near future. Mexico has also threatened to place tariffs on the U.S. And I would like to see Mexico try to place tariffs on the United States. I really, really would. Mexico's number one net export of their economy is their labor force, and a lot of that goes to the United States. And you can't exactly place, tariffs on your labor force, although technically, yes, you can. But that being said, their economy relies so much on what's the word, on remittances that are sent back to their country, I would like to see, just how successful they think it is if they want to try to place a tariff on the United States for importing things into Mexico. Your economy is already in shambles. Your government is controlled by the cartels. You've got, one of the highest murder rates in the Western Hemisphere. It's really not a good place. And you think that placing tariffs on the United States is going to do anything? Good luck with you. The reason Trump is doing this, the administration's plan is to use these tariffs as leverage as part of the ongoing NAFTA renegotiations, much like was done by putting tariffs on China in order to get them to the table and agree to U.S. trade demands in the first place. Same thing kind of goes with Canada. There's a reason why we did it to Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. If we wanted to just do it to Mexico, we wouldn't have done it to Canada. The reason we're doing it to both is because of that renegotiation of NAFTA that is currently underway right now. We're using these new tariffs as leverage to get other countries to bid to our demands. If you've not read The Art of the Deal, you need to go back and read this. It's almost written step by step. This stuff has worked before. It worked with China. We'll see if it works with the EU. We'll see if it works with Canada. We'll see if it works with Mexico. And then by extension, we'll see if it works with NAFTA. I tend to be kind of optimistic on these things, so I say let's give it some time and see exactly what happens. Now, moving on kind of from, more of a global economy with tariffs and whatnot, more fixated specifically on just the United States. We actually got some really, really good job and unemployment numbers that came out this week, and this probably economic news-wise was one of the biggest things, and it just shows just how strong the United States economy currently is right now. But during the month of May, the United States added 223,000 jobs, and the unemployment rate dropped to just 3.8% from 3.9% in April. The black unemployment rate has specifically been in the spotlight for dropping to 5.9%, which is a record low from 6.6% back in April. Record low black unemployment rate. Near record low U.S. unemployment rate. They said I think the last time the unemployment rate was this low was like in the year 2000, so we're looking at 17, 18 years almost since, unemployment rates have been this low. It's really, really good. But also the white unemployment rate dropped to 3.6%. Dropped from 3.6% in April to 3.5% in May. So, we like to talk about how good the black unemployment rate is right now, and it's great. It's at a record low. But, the white unemployment rate is also doing really well in terms of how low it's being. Hispanic unemployment rates are down. Everybody, just in general, is down. And, in terms of just, if you look at the data, we talk about how we try not to be biased on this program, obviously, even though the name is Trump Public Radio, but we try to look at information and just look at it objectively without having any sort of bias to it. And there's really no way that you can look at this economic data and think, oh, this is terrible, it's a bad thing. No, things are objectively better. The Trump economy is doing absolutely great right now. And as of, there's really no indicators that it's going to be slowing down anytime soon, other than, people that are wrong 50% of the time, and then, or I should say people that make a 50-50 guess and then end up being wrong about 75% of the time. So, all those people you see on CNBC and Fox Business and stuff, and they always say, oh, the Trump economy, blah, 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 this, and that's like, no, dude, the economy's doing great, stick to it. But in terms of a forward look, which is kind of what I was referring to there, we've got some forecasting numbers from the Atlanta Federal Reserve showing just how good they think the U.S. economy is going to continue to grow. The Atlanta branch of the Federal Reserve has forecasted second quarter GDP growth to reach an astounding 4.8% annualized. Okay, they're expecting the second quarter GDP growth to be almost 5%. Now, the New York Federal Reserve's forecast model, which last week was at 3%, they've changed their forecast model now to predict 3.5% growth. So, it looks like they're being, a little more, I should say, realistic in speaking. And, if you follow just the different guesses that these different Federal Reserve branches have made, and then compare that to the actual growth, the Atlanta Federal Reserve branch tends to be a little bit higher. The New York Federal Reserve doesn't tend to be too far off, so I would not be surprised if it's only about 3.5%, but the fact that it's so much higher at 4.8 compared to 3.5, I would say that, you can probably guess it to be around maybe 3.7, 3.8. maybe 3.6 if it, things kind of decline just a little bit, but I would not be surprised if it actually went over 4%. The economy is doing great right now. Hiring is doing great. I just talked about the unemployment numbers. And also, consumer spending is expected to increase at a 4.6% rate, which is up from 3.4% last week. So the consumer spending level in terms of increase is expected to increase over 1% higher than what they expected it to be. So, it's not just GDP growth, it's consumer spending. Also, the U.S. Census Bureau report from last week showed that manufacturing is on pace to reach 5.4% growth in the second quarter as well. Just more indication that the U.S. economy is doing really, really well right now. And so, obviously we'll have to wait and see what those numbers end up actually being. But it's not going to be too much longer till we find out. And then we'll really be able to see just how good the U.S. economy actually is. But, the last thing we want to talk about here in economics before we go on to immigration is about companies that are boosting wages because of tax reform. Now, if you remember back, if you're a longtime listener of this program, or someone who just pays attention to the news in general, after they passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act back in December, the first couple months of the year was filled like almost every single day with a story of a different company that was going to be giving bonuses because of tax reform, or a company that was going to be, raising wages because of tax reform. And a lot of companies went out and they announced that, but we haven't actually had a company that's announced that in, it seems like, at least a couple of months now, until today. In fact, this morning, Costco is raising their wages because of tax reform. Starting on June 11th, nearly 130,000 Costco employees are going to get a pay raise. Starting wages at Costco employees will be rising by $1 to $14 per hour, while other warehouse employees are going to see hourly wage raises of roughly 25 to 50 cents. So, we're not talking about, a $3,000 bonus to every single employee. We are talking about steady growth in your wages, and even a rise of 25 cents per hour. If you work 8 hours a day, okay, that's what, 25 cents an hour, so that's an extra $2 per day that you're making. You work, 40 hours per week, roughly, if you're making 25 cents an hour times 40 hours, that's an extra $10 per week that you're bringing into your paycheck. That's a meal. Okay, that's an extra meal. So this is not chump change. This isn't, what's the word that Nancy Pelosi liked to use? Breadcrumbs or crumbs, I think is what she said. This is actual good, solid money in people's pockets. In fact, the company, they're specifically crediting tax reform as the reason why they're doing this. They specifically said that is the driving factor behind these pay raises that they're giving out. And if you're wondering just how much money it's actually going to cost Costco by raising wages just even a little bit here, this wage raise alone is expected to cost the company around $110 million more before taxes. Yes, there's a company that's saying that they're investing $110 million more in the pay of their employees because of tax reform. And then Nancy Pelosi has the guts to go out there and say, this is just crumbs to people. No, it's not. And, in a perfect world, no Costco employee would ever vote Democrat. Unfortunately, some of them probably will. And I only hope that when they get their raise and they look at their paycheck, they remember 0 Democrats voted to give this to you. A bunch of Republicans did. President Trump signed into law. Think about that when you go to the voting box. Now, with that being said, we are pretty much done with economics, and we are moving into some immigration now.
Open the door! Immigration!
La migra, vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
All right, now we're going to start the immigration section of the show, and there's only a couple of stories here. One kind of big story, and then a couple of stories that go along with it that don't really have anything to do with the first story, but show just why that first story is as important as it is. And the first story is wall construction begins. Now, we've kind of said this on the show. We've been covering just, how wall construction has been going. Most of it has been replacing old sections of border fence that are like the old scrap metal kind. In fact, this story kind of has to do with that a little bit. You can debate all day long whether or not you think that border wall construction, quote unquote, includes the, replacing of old sections of fence with new sections of fence, or replacing old sections of fence with new section of actual wall, which is what this story I'm about to read talks about. So I might as well just jump right into it. Construction on a stretch of the border wall began Friday in San Diego. Roughly 14 miles of old fence is being replaced with a bollard-style wall twice as tall as the old 10-foot scrap metal fence. The new portions will also be affixed with anti-climbing plates. The current stretch of fence is the original, built in the 1990s with scrap metal that was scrapped from the Vietnam War. I know that kind of came out a little bit weird the way I said it, but essentially a lot of like old machinery and stuff that was lying around that they were able to salvage from the Vietnam War. The scrap metal they used, that is a lot of what they used to build this original border fence back in the 1990s there in San Diego. And this is literally the original fence. Like, you think about what metal and stuff, especially scrap metal, does when it's just sitting out in the sun for 20, almost 30 years, potentially 25 years, most likely, somewhere around that time frame. It's time to replace this. And you know what? They're not replacing it with other fence. They're replacing it with actual wall, 20-foot tall wall with anti-climbing plates in the bollard style. This is what we want as Trump supporters, as people who want to see the wall built. This is exactly what we need. So whenever people say, oh, no, none of, Ann Coulter will be out there tweeting and being like, miles of wall done yesterday, 0. Miles done today, 0. Total miles done, 0. It's like, okay, woman, how about wait till this 14-mile stretch is done and then, see what happens there. But this isn't the only part where we're actually starting new wall construction with actual border wall and not just like, little fence here and there. And this goes along with a section of wall that's 2 miles long that's under construction in Calexico, California, and also a 20-mile stretch of wall that's currently under construction in New Mexico. So, once that's all done, once this 14, that 20, and that 2, what's that, about 46 miles of wall, or I'm sorry, 36 miles of wall. We talked about how a lot of people think that building the border wall means putting wall on every single square inch of the border. As much as I would almost like to see that, that's not what President Trump has said. He's literally, in his campaign speeches, if you listen to that, he said we don't need wall in every single square inch of the border. What you really need, and you're focused on, at least as of now, before we have this big budget debate that's going to be happening in September, where we'll actually be able to go and revisit these things. And, Steve Bannon did an interview this week where he said that he believes that President Trump will shut down the government if he doesn't get border wall funding. And, Trump had a rally, I believe was it Michigan a couple of weeks ago? I know he had one in Tennessee earlier this week, but he had his rally that he had in Michigan a few weeks ago. He even said that he was willing to shut down the government in order to pay for the wall. And I think at this point, that'll been, by the time that reaches September, that's over a year and a half into his presidency, with barely any border wall funding that he's gotten, with barely any border wall that's actually been constructed. It's time to go after these things. It's time to actually, put your foot in the ground and just be like, hey, I want this, and if you don't give it to me, I'm not going to give you what you want either. And so that's something I definitely think President Trump needs to do, and hopefully he will actually do. But that being said, a lot of people are talking about how there's going to be a big immigration fight over the summer. We covered on the show just a few weeks ago that President Trump has said that during the summer here, before the midterms, what they're planning on doing is going hard against catch and release. And that's something that is part of the reason why we have so many illegal immigrants running around this country. The number one cause of illegal immigrants being in the United States is visa overstays, and the number two reason, or at least maybe not number two, but one that's definitely up there, is catch and release. You literally arrest these people, say, here's your court date, hopefully you show up, and then they leave, and then they never show up for their court date. And, we talked about how Jeff Sessions was saying you can't exactly do exactly that, or you can't use administrative closure in order to shut these cases down, which essentially means you have to hear the cases that are in front of you. You can't just say, oh, we'll put this off later. There are over a million cases that have yet to be heard, and a lot of that has to do with a de facto form of catch and release. So, we're going after these things. Wall construction is underway. Once these sections of wall are done, you can actually be able to say, hey, it's under construction. And you can even say it's under construction now. But, with that being said, it's good to see that this is finally happening, and we're going to move on to the next story. So the next two stories are really, really sad stories, but they show you just why we need the border wall. The first story here is about a Houston teen that was killed by a twice deported illegal alien. A car driven by an illegal alien crashed into another car in Houston, sending a father to the ICU, fracturing a woman's arm, and killing that woman's 17-year-old sister. The deceased girl was named Brittany Baez. Her family described her as the voice of reasoning in the family who kept everyone calm. According to investigators, the illegal alien, identified as Eddie Lopez Hernandez, I don't know what it is with these people with these hyphenated last names, but it seems like they're always popping up here. Identified as Eddie Lopez Hernandez, had previously been deported twice and was on drugs, was driving 70 miles per hour, and didn't use his brakes before crashing into Baez's car. Lopez Hernandez is now facing 4 charges, including murder. And you know what? That girl would be alive if you actually stepped up your job and kept these people out of your country. Okay? Anyone who's already been deported should never be allowed back into the country for any reason whatsoever if you've already been deported. Because if you've been deported, that means you did something wrong in this country. You broke immigration law, and you have to go back. And now this family isn't going to get their girl back. But this guy's going to be able to, probably just go to jail and live out the rest of his life. Where what he should be is back whatever, country he came from, probably Mexico, since that's where most illegal immigrants in the United States come from, is Mexico. But you know what? This is a person who doesn't belong in this country. This is a person who shouldn't have been in this country. This is a person who's already removed forcefully from the country twice. And yet here he is back, driving a car, going 70 miles per hour on drugs, and hitting and killing someone. Okay? You are not in a real society or a real country if you accept this as the norm. And unfortunately, that is the point that we are at. Because so many people will easily see this as like a headline and scroll right past it. They won't click on it. They won't even care. But this family lost a daughter. And you know what? It's a damn shame. Now the second story, not exactly any happier than the first. This time, it wasn't a girl that was killed, it was a Border Patrol officer. An illegal immigrant from Mexico has been convicted of killing a Border Patrol officer. The killer, Gustavo Tiarina Sandoval, again, these freaking hyphenated last names, I tell you, age 34, was found guilty of capital murder and attempted capital murder. He and another illegal alien shot and killed Border Patrol officer Javier Vega in August 2014, while Vega and his father were fishing near Harlingen, Texas. The trial for the second illegal alien, named Ismael Hernandez Vallejo, again, these freaking hyphenated last names, begins in August. Now, Tiarino Sandoval, the first killer, was previously found guilty of repeatedly crossing the border into the U.S. illegally, and Hernandez Vallejo, the second guy, had been deported twice previously. Again, people have been deported multiple times, come into this country, and kill people. We cannot accept that as the norm. Yet here we are. Now, Tiarino Sandoval I wrote this kind of wrong here. Tiarino Sandoval will potentially face the death penalty, and that decision will ultimately be determined by State District Judge Migdalia Lopez. So, hopefully, they both get the death penalty. At least one of them should, because if you come into this country and you're an illegal immigrant and you kill someone, you should get the death penalty. Even if you haven't been deported, if you were an illegal immigrant, you come to this country and you take a life, we're going to take yours. That's the only fair justice system. And that needs to be something that cannot be appealed. We give the fact that these people, they get into our criminal justice system, then they abuse the fact that we have, certain unalienable rights, especially things written down in the Constitution, a process of way things go, literally in the Bill of Rights. But these people are not American citizens. They don't have the same protections as we do as American citizens. They are illegal immigrants. They are foreigners who are, foreign people from places who we don't know where they're from, people who we don't know who they are or what they've even done, yet somehow they show up in our country, whether we let them in and then they stay too long, or they sneak across the border, or they're smuggled in somehow. These people don't belong in our country, and if one of these people comes out and like I said, if they take an American life, theirs should be taken too. It should be automatic death penalty. No 20 years on death row, no appealing the case. Take them out back and get it done. Get rid of these people, because otherwise you're treating this like a joke. That is a person right there who got shot and killed in front of his father. Okay? This is a guy who's a border patrol officer who puts his life on the line every day, making sure that people like this don't get into our country. And he died, almost 4 years ago now, protecting this country. And yet, the trial is just now finishing up. The trial for the second guy hasn't even happened yet, and it's not going to happen for another couple of months here. That's absolutely insane. And things like this should not happen, because we are a joke of a country. And I don't ever want to say that I'm ashamed of my country, but I'm ashamed of the way that past administrations have set up this system, and thank God we are in the process of at least trying to fix it, because one life taken is one life way too many. But with that being said, we're done with the immigration segment, and normally this is the part where we would have our 2018 elections news, but because if you remember what I said earlier at the beginning of the program, I'm going to put that at the end. So instead, we're going to skip forward to our other news, and there's only one story that we have here in other. Again, this really wasn't too big of a week in terms of stuff happening. In this other section here is where we kind of have stories that aren't really like, major breaking stories, or they're stories that aren't, dealing specifically with what the administration is doing right now, just kind of other type of stuff. But this is really the only story, and that is that Missouri Governor Eric Greitens has resigned because of his #MeToo scandal. And this happened on Tuesday, in case you were wondering. Greitens was indicted, and I hope I'm saying his name right. It looks like Greitens, maybe Greitens. If I mispronounce it, doesn't matter. He's the former now Missouri governor. He was indicted in February on one count of invasion of privacy for allegedly tying up a woman he was having an affair with, spitting in her mouth, ripping off her shirt, pulling down her pants, and taking a photo of her. He referred to her as his, quote, little whore, and threatened to make the photo public if she told anyone about the affair that they were having. She also claims that he once tackled her and first forced her to perform oral sex on him. Guy's an absolute creep. Thankfully, he is no longer the Missouri governor. So, if there's any one good thing that comes out of the Me Too movement, it's guys like this no longer being in power. Thank God Al Franken left, and thank God former Missouri Governor Eric Greitens has left as well. He is being replaced by Missouri Lieutenant Governor Mike Parson, who will finish out the term through 2021. So Missouri's governor is now Mike Parson, in case anyone is wondering about that. And if you live in Missouri, I'm sure you've heard about this story. So we'll see what happens with our new governor there in the Missouri there. So that being said, like I said, that was the only story we had in other. Now let's go ahead and get into some current year college craziness.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. You're fucking a white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, cis, scum.
You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us!
It's time for some current year college craziness.
Current year college craziness, this segment of the show where we talk about all the craziness that's happening on college campuses, both here and abroad, but mostly here because the United States is the capital of campus craziness. Now, we only have one story this week. It's the summertime and a lot of people are graduating, and really it's kind of in that lull period before a lot of summer classes at different schools start. So there's not much going on in college campuses right now, but we do have one thing. And this comes out of Clemson University. So a leaked memo shows that Clemson University's College of Science is looking to implement a racial quota for a new faculty that's being hired. The memo specifies that at least 40% of candidates selected for interviews be underrepresented minorities, or URMs, and that 1/3 of their tenure track positions must be filled with URM candidates. The memo was written and called for these measures in order to meet a, quote, diversity goal. Now, Clemson University has released a statement saying that the memo was just a draft and that it has since been revised to eliminate mandatory racial quotas. They only eliminated those quotas because it got leaked, because they got caught. Otherwise, this would have gone forward. We know this would have gone forward. And I would like to live in a world where people are hired not based on the color of their skin, but on their qualities and on their, ability to perform the job duties of whatever job is required. We used to call that, meritocracy, but, apparently that's, racist as well. But, why do we need to mandate that 40% of, any job force needs to be a certain minority? I think it should come naturally. If someone who's a minority is good at that job, then hire them. Same thing if a white person is good at that job, hire them. Let the cards fall where they were, but pick the best possible person for the position. And I'm sorry if that means that that's going to end up just naturally discriminating, but whoever is the best person for the position needs to be the one that's picked. You shouldn't be forcing and say, okay, we're only going to pick black people for this, so hire the best of them. Or you could just say, what you should be saying, look at everybody that's out here and then pick from the best. It doesn't matter if they're black, it doesn't matter if they're white, it doesn't matter if they're Hispanic, it doesn't matter if they're Asian, it doesn't matter. If they're the best person for the job, they're the one who should be picked. And it shouldn't be, click the filter button before you start making your selection. And, luckily Clemson has kind of backtracked by saying that they plan to remove that racial quota there. But like I said, we all know it's because they got caught. Otherwise, they would have been fine with doing this. But that being said, this is the only story that we had in current year college craziness for this week. So that's pretty crazy in and of itself, if I do say so myself. Now, let's go ahead and move on to some international news. So first things first, we're going to be traveling just south of the border to Mexico, showing you another reason why we need to build the border wall. And that is, according to new statistics compiled by Mexico City-based Etelect, I believe that's how you pronounce it, there were an average of 11 political candidates murdered per month from September 8th, 2017 to May 26th, 2018. More specifically, 103 politicians were killed and 112 received threats. Now think about that. 103 politicians, people running for office, were killed essentially in the last 6 months in Mexico. Can you believe that? That's insane. Now, of those that were killed, 67% were specifically assassinated because of who they were, not like random killings or anything. Like, they were specifically like, this guy's running for office, whatever reason we have to, we're going to kill him, boom, he's dead. 67% were like that. 16% of those 103 politicians, so essentially, 16 to 18 of them, showed signs of torture, okay? So this isn't just, go 100 yards back and snipe a guy. This is, we're torturing these people. We are cutting them open. We're breaking their bones. We're burning them. We're, inflicting pain in ways that you wouldn't even know about, okay? This is barbaric. This is inhuman. These people are animals that go out and do things like this. But, with over 313 attacks total, it averaged to around 3 attacks per day. There were 44 attacks against family members even, and 46 relatives were killed. And that number is on top of the 103, okay? So 146 people total dead. 149 people total dead. 46 relatives, 103 politicians. That's a rate of almost 2 politicians for every relative. So think about that. Imagine if, in the U.S., there was this much violence that was going on towards politicians. Now, there's some violence that happens towards politicians. Let's not kid ourselves. But if the rates were as high as this, that would be on the news every single day. And yet, no one hears about this sort of stuff in the United States. And this is something happening directly across our border, just miles away from where a lot of people live in places like San Diego and other border cities, and even, major cities that aren't too far away from the border. States, cities like Tucson or Los Angeles or even like San Antonio or something like that. This is happening not too far away from us. And yet, nothing. We don't hear a word of it. But, they said that it's leading to the point where people don't even want to run for office anymore. Over 1,000 federal and local candidates in Mexico have resigned their candidacies, have suspended their campaigns, citing specific fears of violence, okay? Over 1,000 of them have decided to just say, nope, you know what? This is not worth it. I'm not doing this. And you think that that's a peaceful nation? No, it absolutely is not. And this is all in case you're wondering, in run-up to Mexico's elections, which are going to take place less than a month from now, in July 1st. So if you think things have been bad the last 6 months, wait until you see the last month of the election before things actually happen. It's going to get even worse, especially since it's becoming the summer months as well. But moving from Mexico, we're going to head to Europe here, where we just have a couple of stories, one good, one bad, so we'll go ahead and cover these right now. First things first, Syrian refugee commits 400 crimes since arriving in Germany. Yes, you heard that right, 400. I'll just read this from you here. A Syrian refugee who came to Germany in October 2015 and became part of the tunnel gang of Plauen is facing up to 15 years in prison for committing over 400 crimes since his arrival. The refugee, known as Hatem H., has already been convicted 3 times in Germany for crimes such as assault, where he once even spent 8 months in jail for stabbing a passerby in the stomach and hitting another passerby over the head with a beer bottle. Even in jail, police report that he would constantly be fighting with other inmates and was always threatening the guards. But you know what? You ask yourself, why wasn't this guy deported? I'll answer that right here. When asked about his potential deportation, authorities said, quote, his deportation depends on the immigration authorities. At some point you just have to look at this and be like, this guy's committed 400 crimes. He's already been convicted 3 times. He's been here, about 3.5-ish years now? He's already spent 8 months in jail. He's assaulting people, stabbed a person, hit a guy over the head with a beer bottle, fought his other inmates. This sounds like a person who doesn't belong in your country. This sounds like a person who should have been removed from your country a long, long time ago. Germany, you allow these people to commit 400 crimes and you let them stay? The first crime any refugee commits, they should be sent back to wherever they came from. Or, if you want to make it like lists of minor crimes versus major crime and say, okay, only if it's major crime, fine, whatever. But 400 crimes? You're literally just letting this guy get away with it at this point. Now, thankfully, you've arrested him yet again, and he's facing 15 years in prison. He deserves more than 15 years in prison. Because then again, he gets to live on your taxpayer's dime. He's going to get 3 square meals a day. Probably has decent conditions. But he's just going to go back there and fight with more inmates. He's going to threaten even more guards. You know what you need to do? You need to get this guy on a plane, fly him over Syria, and drop him out. Whether or not you want to give him a parachute's up to you. But get this guy out of your country and send him back home. It is as simple as that. I rest my case. But that was kind of a bad news type of story. So now let's go on to a good news type of story. Now, normally speaking, this would have been the last story of the show. But again, because of the fact that I said we're going to talk about stuff happening with the elections last, this now becomes the second to the last, because after this, we're going to election news. So a follow-up from last week. A conservative member of the German parliament, known with the name of Peter Bystrom, has written a letter to imprisoned British activist Tommy Robinson, offering to fly himself to the UK so Robinson can sign asylum paperwork in prison. Why? Because this guy offered him political asylum in Germany. In Bystrom's letter to Robinson, he wrote that, quote, as spokesman for the AfD on the Foreign Policy Committee of the German Bundestag, I would like to formally offer you political asylum in the Federal Republic of Germany. He added that he has also been in contact with Robinson's lawyer. Bystrom also wrote letters to the European Office of the Commissioner for Human Rights, the German Foreign Office, Amnesty International, and the Human Rights Watch. So, we talked about last week, excuse me, we talked about last week on the show about Tommy Robinson's arrest and the fallout from that and different things like that. But you know what? Whether or not you think that Tommy was actually in the right or in the wrong when he was arrested, it's definitely a travesty what's been going on to him. And so when I see stories that this German MP, this guy who's a member of AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, which is a growing political party in there, the fact that they have, gotten one of their spokespeople out there and said, we are offering him asylum in Germany, we want to help Tommy Robinson out, that warms my heart to hear that, because anything anyone can do to help Tommy out at this point, we please need that to happen. So normally this would be the end of the show, but you know what? This is the point where the rest of this episode is going to be all talking about the upcoming primaries that are happening this week. and also some updates with just the election news in general. So if you want to stop listening to this point, go right ahead. I would not feel bad at all. Or if you want to learn about what's going on in these different primaries, you can listen too. So there are primaries that are happening in several states, actually a bunch of states this upcoming Tuesday, in the states of Alabama, California, Iowa, Mississippi, Montana, New Mexico, South Dakota, and New Jersey. So quite a lot of states, quite a lot of races to go through here. So we might as well just kick it off. First things first with Alabama. Now, Trump won Alabama by 28 points in 2016, but if you remember just recently, Democrat Doug Jones beat Republican Roy Moore in the Senate special election last November. Now, Alabama has a CPVI, that's Cook Partisan, Cook Partisan CVPI, I'm so sorry, Cook Voting Person, whatever. CPVI essentially is a measurement of how Republican or how Democrat a race or a district actually is. Alabama is listed as an R plus 14 state. Now, that does not mean that Republicans win by 14 points. What this actually is the way that they calculate it is they look at how much the margin of victory was for whether it be a Republican or a Democrat the last two presidential election cycles. Then they compare that to how the country overall voted Republican. So you can see how even something that's like 50% Republican and like 48% Democrat can easily be like an R plus 3 or an R plus 4, even though it looks a lot closer than that. But it's also how you get states that are like R plus 14 end up being like, you know, a 28-point margin of victory. So it's not that Democrats can't win in Alabama. We've proven they can. Doug Jones beat Roy Moore. You know, I personally think that there was some voter fraud and intimidation stuff that went on there. Not necessarily intimidation, but I definitely think there was some sort of voter fraud. But even if you take the fact that it was 100% legit, you know, they still barely squeaked off a win. But what that does is it proves that Democrats can win in deep red states like Alabama. So first things first, their governor race. Now, on the Republican side, their governor race is pretty much locked up. Kay Ivey is their current incumbent Republican governor. Now, if you remember, we talk about on this show the website Predictit, which if you don't know what Predictit is, it is a essentially politics betting website where you can bet money on different races and who you think is going to win or other types of things in the politics world. Most of it's election-based stuff, but it ranges from $0 to $1, and you know, the higher you are, closer to $1, the more chance people think you're going to win. So Kay Ivey is currently trading at 99 cents on Predictit. So essentially, she's going to win her primary. But, you know, in the slight case that she doesn't win her primary, one of her primary challengers is Tommy Battle. Now, Tommy Battle is the mayor of Huntsville, Alabama. He's been so since 2009. He's only trading at 5 cents on Predictit. So very little chance that he'll actually win. There's two more people that are actually running in the same primary, but both of them are currently trading at 0 cents on Predictit. So they are at least listed. A lot of these races don't even list some candidates on Predictit, which is really unfortunate because I'd like to see exactly where every single person is currently polling at least in terms of those election things. But the third candidate is Scott Dawson, who is a preacher and writer from Birmingham. And the last person is Bill Hightower. He was an Alabama state senator from 2013 to 2018. He's not seeking re-election again because he's focusing on his gubernatorial run. And since you're trading at 0 cents, something tells me you're not going to win and you're going to be out of a job, dude. So it looks like it's going to essentially be Kay Ivey versus whoever the Democrat nominee ends up being. Now, on the Democrat side, we have Sue Bell Cobb. She is a former Chief Justice on the Alabama Supreme Court from 2006 to 2011. She was the only Democrat on it and was also the first woman elected as Chief Justice. We also have our next candidate is Chris Countryman. Chris Countryman spent 4 years in the Civil Air Patrol. Our third candidate is James C. Fields. He's a former Alabama state rep from 2008 to 2010. He also ran for Alabama Lieutenant Governor in 2014 and then lost in the general election. Our fourth candidate on the Democrat side is Walter Maddox, who is the current mayor of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and has been so since 2006. Now, there was no Predictit betting market for the Democrat side. Reason why is it does not really matter. The Republican is going to win this race. You know, the reason why Doug Jones was able to pull off a win is because they got so much outside attention, and they spent months and months and months just attacking Roy Moore with all the Me Too stuff. And he still barely lost the thing. They got essentially like almost like over 90% Democrat turnout from 2016, which was absolutely unheard of. Which is why, again, I wanted to say that I do believe there was some voter fraud that was going on there. But that being said, this race, this governor race, is not something that's nationally focused. It's not something that the Democrats are pumping millions and millions of dollars out of state into. And so it's going to go the way a normal race, a statewide race, normally was going to go in Alabama. And that is, a Republican is going to win in November. It's as simple as that. And it's to the point where you don't even care about who's running in the Democrats because it literally doesn't matter. But thankfully, there is no other Senate election in Alabama, and there's also no House races that are really competitive that we want to pay attention to. So moving on, the next state normally would be California because I want to do these things in alphabetical order. But because California is really, really long, I'm actually going to skip it. Instead, go to Iowa. Now, Iowa has a gubernatorial election, and it also has a couple of House races that we want to look at, but there's no Senate election in Iowa. Now, Iowa currently has a CPVI of R+3, so Republicans are favored to actually win statewide races in Iowa. Now, in terms of the governor race here, their current incumbent Republican governor is Kim Reynolds. She's running unopposed in this primary, so it's going to be her on the ballot in November. Now, in terms of her primary challenge, I'm sorry, not her primary. In terms of her general election challenger, we have to look at the Democratic primary here, and there's 5 candidates that we want to go over here. Now, the first candidate is Fred Hubble. He is a businessman. That's really all I was able to find out about this guy. But he's currently trading at 90 cents on Predicted for the Democrat primary for this race. So stronger chances than not, he's going to end up winning and then face Kim Reynolds in the general election. But the other person that's in second place on Predicted is Kathy Glasson. All I was able to find out about her was she's a former union president. So Democrats in Iowa, you pretty much have a choice between a businessman and a union president. Make the right choice, whatever you see fit. Now, there are also 3 more people that are worth noting that are running in the Democrat primary. However, none of them are listed on Predicted, so their chances of winning are essentially slim to none in terms of at least in this Democrat primary. But I would not be surprised to see if one of them, does better than the other, if you kind of understand what I mean. First up is Andy McGuire. He's the former Iowa Democrat Party, she is the former Iowa Democratic Party chairwoman. She was also a superdelegate at the 2006 DNC, although I was not able to find out who she supported in the DNC, either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, one of the two. The second person is John Norris. Now, John Norris is a career politician working for Democrat campaigns in Iowa. He was actually the director of John Kerry's 2004 Iowa campaign. He's also former Iowa Democrat Party chairman. So you got 2 former Iowa Democrat Party chairmen running against each other. So we'll see who ends up doing better there. And the last person is Ross Wilburn, who is the former mayor of Iowa City, Iowa. Now, those are your 5 people running in the Democrat primary. Probably going to end up being Fred Hubble, who ends up going on to win it. And then we'll see who Kim Reynolds then has to face because of that. Now, there are 2 House district races that are in Iowa that are worth paying attention to. The first race is House District 1. House District 1 has a CPVI of D+1, so Democrats are actually favored in this race in general. Now, District 1 is interesting to look at because it went to Obama twice in 2008 and 2012 by double digits both times. However, Trump won the district by 4 points, and Rod Blum, the incumbent Republican, he won it by 8 points. So it goes to show you that this is one of those districts that's really kind of swinged towards the Republican side in recent years. Now, District 1, in case you're wondering where it's located, is located in the northeastern part of the state and includes the city of Cedar Rapids. So that kind of tells you about where it's at. Now, on the Republican side, Rod Blum, the incumbent that I just mentioned, he's currently running unopposed in the Republican primary, so he's going to be there in the general election in November. Now, in terms of his Democrat challenger, again, it's important to look at these races, especially close districts like this, where Democrats might actually be favored. We've got 4 Democrats that are currently running in this primary here. None of them are listed on Predicted. There was not a Predicted race for the Democrat side on this, so can't really give you any more information about that. But I can tell you about these 4 candidates here. First up is Abby Finkenauer. Abby Finkenauer is an Iowa state representative, has been since 2015. She has been endorsed by U.S. Representative Eric Swalwell from California. She's also been endorsed by Emily's List and the DCCC. Now, if you don't know what the DCCC is, it's essentially the Democrats' campaign thing where they try to go out and look at different races that they think they can win. It's essentially, the Democrat Party's campaign wing of itself, in case you're wondering that. Now, the second candidate on the Democrat side is Thomas Heckroth. Thomas Heckroth works in clothing manufacturing. He also worked in the Labor Department under President Obama. The third candidate is George Ramsey. He used to work in the Missouri state government. Couldn't really find anything else about him besides that. And the fourth and final candidate here is Courtney Rowe. And the only thing I could find out about Courtney is Courtney is currently in the United States Air Force Reserves. So good for you, Courtney Rowe there. But, I don't really like Democrats at all. But it's interesting seeing just like how these people, especially Republicans too, but just to see the different backgrounds that leads these people into thinking that they actually have a chance running for these districts. So it's either going to be Abby Finkenauer, I'm guessing, or Thomas Heckroth. The only reason I say that is because of the fact that they seem to have more backing, especially Abby Finkenauer with the DCCC backing her. That goes a very, very long way. That's essentially, the Democrat Party itself is saying we endorse you for this race. So that's all there is for District 1. Hopefully Rod Bloom will go on to keep that district red in November. Now, the next district in Iowa that we're going to talk about is House District 3. House District 3 has a CPVI of R+1. District 3 also went to Obama twice, both in 2008 and 2012, but only by single digits. Trump won the district by 4, and David Young, the incumbent Republican, he won it by 14. So here we see that both of these districts are districts that went to Obama twice, that Trump won by a small margin, but the Republican challenger in that race ended up actually doing better than Trump. Now, that's something that we have seen in a lot of places across the country, especially here in Texas. We see that a lot. Now, District 3, in case you're wondering where it's located, is located in the southwestern corner of Iowa and includes actually the city of Des Moines. So you got your capital in there as well. Now, on the Republican side, as I mentioned, we have David Young, the incumbent Republican. He's running unopposed in the Republican primary, so he will be on the ballot in November. And there are 3 Democrats running on the Democrat side. First up is Cindy Axney. She's a small business owner, has been endorsed by Emily's List and the Des Moines Register. So you have a major newspaper in there in Iowa has endorsed her for this race. So that tends to be why I think she's probably going to be the one who ends up going on to win it. Now, the next person on the list is Pete D'Alessandro. Now, Pete D'Alessandro was Bernie Sanders' 2006 Iowa campaign director and has been endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont, has been endorsed by Justice Democrats and Our Revolution. Now, we've talked about these different groups in the show. Justice Democrats was something that was started by Cenk Unger from the Young Turks, especially essentially trying to be a, thing where they go out and they endorse different political candidates to try to get progressives in Congress. It's kind of in shambles right now. They got a lot of money issues, so their endorsement might not mean that much anymore. But Our Revolution was a Bernie Sanders affiliated group that again also wants to try to get progressives into Congress and into different elected areas. So hopefully no candidates that are endorsed by either of those two groups on the Democrat side go on to win. Because the last thing we need in this country is progressives that are potentially going to end up winning races. Now, the third and final person for the Democrat side here is Eddie Morrow. Eddie Morrow is a small business owner. He ran for Iowa House in 2016, but lost in the primary. So it looks like he's probably going to lose in the primary again. Hopefully, David Young, Republican, will go on to keep that race red. Now, moving on from Iowa, we're going to move back down south, this time to Mississippi. Now, Mississippi only has a couple of things to look at here, so pretty short. There is no gubernatorial election in Mississippi this year, so that's something we don't have to look at. Now, they do have a Senate election. Now, Mississippi as a whole, as a state, their CPVI is R+9, so once you start getting to about R+3, or sorry, not R+3, once you get to about R+5 or higher, it's essentially extremely low chances of Democrats actually being able to win that in terms of flipping things to be blue that are currently red Now, there are some cases where there are things that are R+5 and higher that are blue, but almost every single one of them, with the exception of Doug Jones in Alabama, there has been blue for quite a while now, and it's not something that's just going to flip in general. It would take more than a blue wave. It would take an extreme blue tsunami, which we know is not going to happen. In fact, if anything, there's going to be a red wave that might happen in this case. But in terms of, the Mississippi Senate race here, on the Republican side, we have incumbent Republican Senator Roger Wicker. He's currently trading at 98 cents on Predictit, so he's going to win this thing, and he's going to, continue to be the nominee. But in case he somehow loses, his primary opponent is Richard Boyanton, who is currently trading at only 1 cent on Predictit. I couldn't really find anything else about Richard Boyanton, which probably proves that, Senator Roger Wicker is going to be on the ballot in November. He's going to win his primary. Now, on the Democrat side, there are two candidates worth looking at here. First up is David Beria. Now, David Beria is a Mississippi State representative since 2012. He is currently the Mississippi House Minority Leader. So that's the position pretty high up in the Mississippi Democrat Party there in terms of elected officials. So I want to say he's probably going to be the one that ends up actually going on to face Roger Wicker in the general election. But his primary opponent is Omeria Scott, who is a Mississippi State representative since 1993. So we're talking career politician in the Mississippi State government there. Now, in that race, there's also 4 other Democrats running, but I couldn't find any information about those people besides their names. But there's also 1 Libertarian and 1 Independent running as well. Now, moving on to House of Representatives, there's only one race that we want to look at here, and that's House District 3, which has a CPVI of R+13, so extremely Republican there. It's currently an open primary, which is part of the reason why I'm including this here. Open primaries meaning that the person that's the incumbent is not going to be on the ballot. Theoretically, any race could kind of, go for it. It's going to be, an open primary. But incumbent Republican Representative Greg Harper is not seeking re-election. Now, if you're wondering where District 3 is in Mississippi, it is located in the southwestern corner of the state, and then it stretches across the center of the state all the way to the Alabama border. So if you're wondering where it's at, that kind of gives you a general idea. Now, Predictit trading shows that Republicans for the general election are at 85 cents to keep this seat red in November. So extremely high chance that Republicans are going to keep this seat, even though it is an open primary. Now, on the Republican side, because Republicans are going to win this seat, we have to look at who's running. So, first up is Sally Dottie. Sally Dottie is a Mississippi State Senator and has been since 2012. Couldn't really find anything else about Sally except for that. Now, Sally's primary opponent is Michael Guest. Michael Guest, all I could find is that he is a district attorney for 2 counties in Mississippi. So, couldn't really find too much information about these 2 people here for this Republican primary for District 3 in the Mississippi House. But, other than that, what are you going to do? Can't really figure it out. We'll definitely find out more about these people when the general election comes around. Now, in terms of the Democrat primary, we have Michael Evans, who is also a Mississippi State rep since 2012. And there are also 1 other Democrat running, 4 other Republicans running, but I really couldn't find any information about those people at all. So, one of those people is obviously going to win the primary, and then they'll have to go on and face whoever it is in the Democrat side in the general election in November. So hopefully it'll be, someone good. That way they don't have to worry about potentially flipping that seat blue. Now, moving on to the next state we have is Montana. So Montana has no gubernatorial election happening, thankfully, and also their at-large House race, which if you remember during the special election last year, Greg Gianforte ended up winning that race, and that was another race that the Democrats tried to pour, millions and millions of dollars from out of state in, try to, slander the guy, talking about how he, body slammed a reporter, which, the reporter probably deserved it to begin with. But they were able to make it somewhat competitive, but it's not going to be competitive this time around. They don't have the money from the outside backing these Democrat candidates. It's not going to be competitive at all. And Greg Gianforte is going to continue being the representative there. He's going to win his primary and the general election as well. So I'm not even going to cover who he's facing in his primary because, frankly, I don't care and it doesn't matter. Now, they do have a Senate election. Now, this is one of those elections that we are keeping close eyes on because this Senate election is to potentially replace John Tester. Now, John Tester is a Democrat in a state that Trump won, who's up for re-election here in 2018. He's one of 10 of those people that are potential seats that Republicans could try to flip to be red. Now, Tester in 2012, he only won by 4 points, okay? So very slim margin when he won in 2012. Now, as Trump, he won Montana in 2016 by 20 points, okay? A lot bigger margin. So that's why you think, John Tester is in pretty deep trouble. That being said, on the Democrat primary side, he is running unopposed, so he will be on the ballot in November. And in case you're wondering about what Predicted has to say, Predicted's actually showing that his re-election chances in November currently stand at 62 cents. So they're actually saying that they're favoring him being reelected rather than being replaced. Now, I personally think that John Tester probably is going to be, him and Missouri are our two biggest chances for flipping seats to be red, but we'll see where things go. But that being said, he is going to win his primary because he doesn't have any challenger. Now, on the Republican side, it's very important to look at who's running there, because one of these people is going to have to face him. And if you want to flip that seat red, it's going to be one of these upcoming people I'm about to talk about. There's 4 Republicans that are running that are worth pointing out. And first off is Matt Rosendale. Matt Rosendale is currently trading at 89 cents on Predicted, so very, very good chance that he is going to win that Republican primary and then face Tester in the general election in November. Now, Matt Rosendale is a state auditor. He's also a former Montana state senator who also served as Senate Majority Leader. He's also a former Montana state representative as well. So this guy has had a lot of experience in the Montana State Senate and the Montana State House. Just you could say the Montana State Legislature in general. A lot of experience, a lot of support from them. He has been endorsed by U.S. Senators Ted Cruz from Texas, Rand Paul from Kentucky, and Mike Lee from Utah. So 3 people who I pretty much like there have endorsed the guy. So I want to say, Matt Rosendale, here's your thumbs up, go for it, and I hope you win. Now, in case he doesn't win, the other 3 Republicans, we still have to look at who they are just in case. Currently trading in second place at 10 cents is Russ Fagg. Yes, his name is actually Fagg, F-A-G-G. Not the bundle of sticks like a lot of people like to mention it. But Russ Fagg is a former district court judge and also a former Montana state representative. So at least he has some experience both in the judicial and the legislative body there in Montana. Now, the third candidate is Troy Downing. Troy Downing is a U.S. Air Force veteran who did 2 tours in Afghanistan, is a businessman in real estate, and has been endorsed by General Michael Flynn, who, a guy who we do like on this show. So, multiple endorsements of different candidates from people that we like. Obviously we want to favor one more than the other, but at least we're showing the people who we like are getting out there and endorsing other candidates. So not everyone is just like some nobody people. But Troy Downing's only trading at 4 cents on Predicted in third place, so very unlikely that Troy will then go on to actually win the Republican primary. But the last person here is Albert Olszewski. Albert Olszewski is a Montana state senator, started in 2017, so very new to that job, but was a former Montana state representative from 2015 to 2017, also was an orthopedic surgeon and a U.S. Air Force veteran, so pretty good rap sheet there, but only trading at 2 cents on Predicted, so very low likelihood of winning that race. Now, to kind of summarize the Senate race before we move on to another state here is it's going to be John Tester on the Democrat side versus probably Matt Rosendale on the Republican side. So if you are listening to this program and you live in Montana and you are listening to this before Election Day on Tuesday, June 5th, go out there and vote for Matt Rosendale. If you're listening to this afterwards, I would suggest you vote for him in the general election in November. So let's take a Senate seat away from the Democrats and stick it on the Republican column. But that being said, that's really all I have to say about Montana. Now, I'm also going to I'm kind of skipping some states here just because I want to do these short ones first and leave the long ones for longer. But the next state we want to cover is South Dakota. South Dakota does not have a Senate election, so it's just governor and then their at-large House district. Now, they have a CPVI of R+14, so again, Democrats stand little to no likelihood at all of actually winning in South Dakota. Now, in terms of their governor race, incumbent Republican Governor Dennis Daugaard is term limited, so he cannot seek re-election now, which means it's an open primary. Now, if you're wondering about, how did Trump do in this race versus whatever, Trump's 30-point win in 2016 is South Dakota's largest margin of victory in the last 5 presidential elections. So Trump did extremely well there, shows that any candidate that shows himself to be pro-Trump is probably going to end up actually going on to win that thing. I would just go on and, kind of believe that. Now, on the Republican side, there are 2 candidates running. First off is Kristi Noem. If you don't know who Kristi Noem is, she is actually the current U.S. representative for South Dakota's at-large congressional district in the U.S. House. So she is literally South Dakota's rep in the House. Now, she is running for governor, so she's probably going to win. She's currently trading at 65 cents on Predicted, so not the highest, but also not the lowest either. So, good luck to her. She probably has the greatest chance of winning that thing. But the other person she's running against is Marty Jackley. Marty Jackley is South Dakota's current attorney general, has been so since 2009. So he looks like he has a lot of experience within the state government, where she has a lot of, popularity statewide there. Marty Jackley is currently trading at 39 cents on Predicted. More likelihood than not that he's going to lose it, but we'll see where things go from there. Now, on the Democrat side, there's only one person running, so this person is going to end up on the ballot in November, and that is Billy Sutton. Now, Billy Sutton is a South Dakota state senator and also serves as the South Dakota State Senate Minority Leader, but is not seeking re-election to that post due to term limits as well. So looks like since he can't get one job there, he's also probably going to lose this job here. So looks like Mr. Billy Sutton might end up being out on the unemployment line by November. What's election day? I don't know. November, whatever. Now, in terms of the at-large House district in South Dakota, is also an open primary because Kristi Noem, who I just mentioned, is running for governor. She's not seeking re-election to her House seat there. So that leaves it an open primary. Again, this is an R+14 state, so very little chance that any Democrat's actually going to win it. Now, on the Republican side, we have 3 people running. First off is Dusty Johnson. Dusty Johnson is the former chief of staff to South Dakota Governor Dennis Daugaard, the incumbent. He's also been endorsed by South Dakota Governor Dennis Daugaard. So, the endorsement from the current guy really does mean a lot, especially since you have someone like that who, has won statewide office before. That doesn't necessarily mean that Dusty Johnson's going to win the Republican primary, though, because you have to look at some of the other people that are running. The second person running is Chantel Krebs. Now, Chantel Krebs is the South Dakota Secretary of State since 2014, currently in a statewide elected position, but she is very pro-Trump in terms of what her agenda is. She has also been endorsed by U.S. Representative Steve King from Iowa and Kansas Secretary of State / President Trump advisor Chris Kobach. Now, Chris Kobach is somebody who we really do like on the show, and Steve King is one of both me and Enzo's favorite politicians. So because of that alone, we're going out there and actually supporting Chantal Krebs. So hopefully she can go on and win and pull this thing off. There was not any predicted anything for this race, so I can't really tell you who is currently who do people think is going to win, although we do here on the show wish that Chantal Krebs ends up winning. But the third and final candidate on the Republican side is Neil Tapio. And Neil Tapio is a South Dakota state senator since 2017, but he was actually Trump's 2016 South Dakota campaign advisor director. So he's also pro-Trump. If Chantal Krebs doesn't get it, I'd like to see this guy get it, but I do want to hope Chantal Krebs gets it there. On the Democrat side, there is only one person running unopposed, and that is a guy by the name of Timothy Bjorkman. And all I could find out about him was that he is a former circuit court judge. Now, we've now done all the states that are small. Now we're about to do a couple of longer states. Specifically, we're going to do, first up, New Mexico, which is kind of shorter here, but then New Jersey and California. Now, I want to leave actually New Jersey for last because there's a couple of stories I want to cover in New Jersey there. But we'll do New Mexico here and then California. So First things first, in New Mexico, they have a gubernatorial election that is an open primary because incumbent Republican Governor Susana Martinez is term limited. So she will not be able to seek re-election. And because of the fact that New Mexico has a CPVI of D+3, Democrats are favored to win it. In fact, predicted trading shows that Democrats are at 88 cents right now to flip this seat being blue. So it looks like the Republicans, for sure are going to lose at least one governor race that they currently hold. Now, because of the fact that Democrats are most likely to win this race, I'm going to talk about the Democrat primary first. Now, first person who's currently trading at 99 cents unpredicted in the Democratic primary is Michelle Lujan Grisham. Now, Michelle Lujan Grisham is the current U.S. representative for New Mexico's 1st congressional district, and she's been that since 2013. Because of that and the fact that she's trading at 99 cents right now unpredicted, she's going to win that Democrat primary, and since that's a race that Republicans are probably going to lose in the general election, she's most likely going to be New Mexico's next governor, just being real. In case that doesn't happen, though, and somehow she does lose this primary, her primary opponent next up, currently trading at 2nd place with 2 cents unpredicted, is Jeff Apodaca. Now, Jeff Apodaca worked as a senior executive at CBS and also spent 8 years as vice president at Univision. He's also the son of former New Mexico Governor Jerry Apodaca. So, looks like maybe he's trying to want to keep that position in the family there. But probably not going to win. In terms of the third person running in the Democrat primary is Joseph Cervantes, who is a New Mexico state senator and also a former New Mexico state representative, but he is not listed unpredicted for whatever reason. So if you're not listed unpredicted, I'm just going to assume that your chances are, extremely, extremely low to even stand a chance. So on the Republican side, however, there's only one person running, and that is Steve Pearce. Steve Pearce is the current U.S. representative for New Mexico's 2nd congressional district. It looks like it's going to be one of their representatives versus another representative in the general election there, and then the Democrats going to end up winning it. Now, they also have in New Mexico a Senate race that's currently going on. Again, it's a D+3 state, and this is a Senate seat that is currently held by a Democrat, so I don't think the Republicans are going to be able to win this thing, but we're still going to cover it anyways. On the Democrat side, we have Martin Heinrich, who is the current incumbent Democrat senator there from New Mexico. He's running unopposed in the Democrat primary, so he will be on the ballot in November. His re-election in November is currently trading at 90 cents unpredicted, so extremely high likelihood that that's a seat that the Democrats keep blue. But on the Republican side, there is only one person running also, which means these two guys are going to face each other in the general election in November. And the Republican guy running is Mick Rich. Now, all I could find out about Mr. Mick Rich, he owns a construction company. There you go. But moving on to more specific, there's only one House race I want to cover in New Mexico. You can probably guess what it is if you were listening earlier, and that is House District 1. House District 1 currently is an open primary because, as I said, Democrat Representative Michelle Lujan Grisham, the incumbent, is not seeking re-election because she's running for governor, and as we said, she's probably going to end up winning governor as well. House District 1 has a CPVI of D+7, so, Republicans are not going to win this race. In case you're wondering where this district is located, District 1 is located in the center of the state and includes most of the city of Albuquerque. So, right around the major metropolitan area there. Now, I have these people in order of how they're listed on Predicted, which is kind of how I've been going. And if they're not listed on Predicted, then I go by alphabetical order. So currently in first place on the Democrat primary, trading at 77 cents, is Deborah Haaland. Now, Deborah Haaland ran for New Mexico lieutenant governor in 2014, but lost in the general election to the Republicans that ran that year. She is the current chairwoman of the Native American Democratic Caucus of New Mexico and also works as a community organizer. And now, if you'd remember, we had a community organizer who once ran for president and ended up winning back in 2008. So, not too good that these types of people is who the Democrats choose to be as their nominees, but it looks like Deborah Haaland's probably going to win not only the Democrat primary, but also win this race because of how Democrat that district actually is. But in case she loses, her second closest opponent, trading at 37 cents in second place, is Damon Martinez, who is a U.S. attorney and also a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserves. So, I kind of have a bias towards military people myself. And although I'm not a Democrat, and although I don't like Democrats, I would have to say, hopefully they would make the right decision and choose Damon Martinez over Deborah Haaland. But in third place at 7 cents, meaning very low likelihood of winning, is Antoinette Cedillo Lopez. All I could find out about her is she is a professor at the University of New Mexico. In fourth place, currently trading at 1 cent, is Patrick Davis. He is on the Albuquerque City Council and is also a community organizer. So not too good there. He's also a former police officer in Washington, D.C. So he does know D.C. a little bit, probably more so than the other candidates, which is good, but being a community organizer is bad. Now, currently trading in fifth place on Predicted at 0 cents, which means, you wonder why these people are even on there anymore, is Damian Lara. Damian Lara is an attorney specializing in immigration and family law. A Democrat attorney specializing in immigration is definitely someone who we do not want in the United States House of Representatives. Luckily, though, it looks like this person's not even going to win their primary. Now, there's one more person in the Democrat primary, and that's Paul Moya. He is a small business owner, but he is not listed on Predicted, so he ain't going to win. Now, on the Republican side for House District 1, the Republican primary, is only one person running unopposed, and that is Janice Arnold Jones. Another hyphenated last name. Janice Arnold Jones is a former New Mexico state representative and also ran for New Mexico governor in 2010, but lost in the Republican primary. So Janice Arnold Jones is going to win the Republican primary and also will be on the ballot in November. So although that is a district that the Republicans are not going to win in November, good luck, Janice Arnold Jones. You're going to need it. But moving on next, actually we are now to California. So California has a lot of races here that we're going to cover. So we might as well just jump straight into it. First things first is the California governor race. Now, before we say anything about California, you need to understand California politics. If you've made it this far into the program, thank you so much for still listening. California runs their primaries differently. All candidates, regardless of party, will show up on the ballot at the same time. Okay? So that's Republicans, Democrats, Independents, doesn't matter. Everybody's on the same ballot. The two candidates that get the most votes, that means the top two finishers, regardless of whatever party they're in, will then face off in the general election in November. This means that many races are going to end up being Democrat versus Democrat. And also, Democrats are kind of concerned that some races might end up being Republican versus Republican because there's so many Democrats that are running in some of these races that it's splitting their vote, which they really don't like. Now, that helps us as Republicans, but at the same time, this system is designed so that Republicans cannot win statewide races. It sucks, but, that's the way it is. Now, in terms of how Predicted is going, they're currently trading showing that Democrats are at 91 cents right now to keep the seat blue. I really don't think any Republican has a chance of winning anything statewide in California ever again, or at least, not for the foreseeable future. So it's just important to see, more so like House races and stuff, because you're not going to win this governor race. But that being said, we're still going to cover it. Now, now in California, the way that Predicted has this set up, which is the right way to do this, is instead of having a Democrat primary winner and a Republican primary winner, they have first place and second place. Because as we said, the top two candidates are the ones who go and face off in the general election. So, the big race is first place and the big race is second place. Everything else doesn't matter. So that's the only two things you're looking for. Now, for the first place race, we have Democrat Gavin Newsom, currently trading at 99 cents on Predicted. Now, that doesn't mean that Gavin Newsom is going to win in the general. I mean, it kind of does. But that means is that, almost 100% chance that he is going to come in first place. Doesn't say anything about the general yet. It just means that he's going to win and be one of the two people to make it to round two, which is the general election. Now, Gavin Newsom is the current California lieutenant governor, is the former mayor of San Francisco, and also has been endorsed by a lot of people who I'm going to read off here. Gavin Newsom has been endorsed by U.S. Senator Kamala Harris from California, U.S. Representative Ro Khanna from California, former U.S. Representative Gabby Giffords from Arizona. If you don't remember her, she was the one who got shot. And Gavin Newsom has also been endorsed by California Secretary of State Alex Padilla, Long Beach Mayor Robert Garcia, Sacramento Mayor Darnell Steinberg, and the San Francisco Chronicle newspaper. So Gavin Newsom is 100% essentially going to make it to that second ballot there. Now, the next few candidates that I'm going to talk about here for this first place race, just keep in mind that the level that they're currently trading at in terms of how they're doing and predict it, this is for the first place race. Keep in mind, their numbers, some of them are going to be the same candidates in the second place race, but the numbers will be different. Just remember, this is for the first place race. Now, the other candidate is Republican John Cox, who is currently trading at 4 cents on Predictit, but actually trading in second place right now. So, not too shabby there. John Cox has been endorsed by President Trump, has been endorsed by House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy from California, and also has been endorsed by Newt Gingrich. So, a lot of good high-level endorsements there. Part of the reason why he has kind of sprung forward in terms of how the Republicans in that race are currently doing. He's actually, I'm going to spoil it here real quick, he's actually currently trading in first place for that second place race. So it's probably actually going to end up being Democrat versus Republican in the general election for the California governor race, which, helps Republicans because at least they get to show up on the ballot. But in case you're wondering what John Cox has done, he founded a law and accounting firm. So good for you, John Cox. In third place, trading at 1 cent on Predictit, is Antonio Villagrosa, who is a former California state representative, also former mayor of Los Angeles. Excuse me. He's been endorsed by U.S. Representatives Jim Costa, Lucille Roybal Allard, and Karen Bass, all from California. Also been endorsed by San Jose Mayor Sam Licardio, the Los Angeles Times, and the San Diego Union Tribune. In fourth place at 1 cent on Predictit is Republican Travis Allen, who is a California state representative. He also has a Me Too scandal, so not looking too good for Travis Allen there. But in fifth place at 1 cent is Democrat John Chiang, who is the current California state treasurer, has been endorsed by U.S. Representatives Brad Sherman, Ted Lieu, and Alan Lowenthal, all those from California. 3 people who I definitely do not like. So John Chiang, hopefully you don't come in first or second place there. So keep in mind, everything I just said was for the first place race. So it's going to be Gavin Newsom winning that race. Now, the second place race is also important, as we said, because second place goes on to then show up in the ballot in November. Now, for the second place race, I'm not going to read out the information about the candidates, because I just did. It's literally all 5 the same people. I'm just going to tell you where they're currently standing. So in first place is John Cox at 82 cents, the Republican John Cox. So that's why I said it looks like Republicans are actually going to make it onto that ballot. In second place at 25 cents on Predictit is Antonio Villagrosa. In third place at 4 cents is Travis Allen. Fourth place at 2 cents is Gavin Newsom, meaning, he's trading so low in second place because everyone expects him to, do well in first place. But in fifth place is, again, John Chiang at 1 cent. So there are also 9 other Democrats, 3 other Republicans, 2 Green parties, 2 Libertarians, and 6 independents that are also running in this race. But none of them matter because none of them stand a chance. Now, moving on from the governor race, we look at the Senate race. Now, the Senate race is also something that's kind of looked at because a lot of Democrats think that they're going to be able to upset current incumbent Democrat Senator Dianne Feinstein in this primary here. So, a lot of them think they can do that. And for that reason, it's worth looking at. Now, Dianne Feinstein, if you don't know, she has been in office since 1992. So it's time for her to go. But we have to look at who her primary challengers are. So her re-election in general is actually trading at 80 cents on Predictit right now. And that's technically her both general election and her primary election are both factored in together, believe it or not there. So, she's currently trading at 80 cents, probably going to win it. And as much as I don't like her at all. Who I really don't like is her primary challenger that stands the most chance of upsetting her, and that is Kevin De Leon. If you don't know who Kevin De Leon is, he's a California state senator and was also the California State Senate President pro tempore. So This guy was the president of the California State Senate. Very high level Democrat position there. He's also very anti-gun. He's one of the most anti-gun candidates that's out there right now. He also doesn't know anything about guns. If you see that video of him talking about a ghost gun, just type in Kevin De Leon ghost gun, and it's the funniest video you ever see. You'll definitely see why this guy doesn't belong anywhere near the United States Senate. But he stands the greatest chance of upsetting Dianne Feinstein, and as much as I hate to say it, I don't like her, but I hate him even more, so I hope she wins her primary. I really do. And the only reason I say that is because the other two people running against them, also in the Democrat primary, neither of them stand a chance, so it's going to be her or him. I'd rather it be her at that point, as much as I don't like her. But the third person running in the Democrat primary is Adrienne Nicole Edwards, who ran for the United States House of Representatives in 2014, 2016, and 2017, losing every single time. So it looks like she's going to lose for a fourth time as well. What does she want? She wants student loan forgiveness. So good luck with that. But in the next person that's up in fourth place here is a guy by the name of Herbert Peters. And he ran for U.S. House in Nevada, actually, in 2012 and 2014. Also ran for U.S. Senate in California in 2016. But he lost in the primary every time. So it looks like he is going to lose in the primary yet again. But, you know, this Senate race continues. Sorry about that. The Senate race continues with the Republican side. Now, as I said, everybody runs together, both Republicans and Democrats, for these things. But because there was no actual predicted race up for the Senate race here, in terms of first place, second place, anything like that, I just put Democrats on one side, Republicans on the other. So in terms of the Republicans that are running, first up we have Arun Bhumitra. Very hard name to pronounce. But Arun Bhumitra was a Trump delegate at the 2016 RNC. So you know what? Good for you, dude. Another Republican running is James Bradley, who is a U.S. Coast Guard veteran and also has served as both a chief financial officer and a chief operations officer of the company that he worked for. And third Republican is Roque de la Fuente, who is a car salesman and owns 3 banks. Now, what else about him? He's previously ran for office as a Democrat. These people cannot be trusted. Or I should say, the fourth Republican running is a guy named Jerry Laws, who ran for U.S. Senate in 2016, ran for California House of Representatives in 2014, and also lost in the primary both times. The fifth Republican running is Patrick Little, who apparently has been making a lot of fame on the internet because of anti-Semitism that he has. So interesting there. He's even been denied entry to the California GOP convention because of that. So yeah, not a good way to win your primary by doing that sort of stuff there. Another Republican running is Kevin Modis, who ran for U.S. House in 2014 and lost in the primary. Finally, we have a Republican, Tom Pauser, who is a U.S. Air Force veteran, ran for Senate in 2016, lost in the primary there. So, you know, this is a very high likelihood that the top 2 finishers in this Senate race are going to be both Dianne Feinstein and Kevin De Leon. So Republicans might actually get locked out of this race altogether, which would be really unfortunate for Republicans, but it is a likelihood of actually happening. But moving on from the Senate race, let's go and look at a couple of House races here in California. There's just a few. I think, actually, there's only 2 that we want to cover here. First up is House District 39, which has a CPVI of even, meaning, you know, theoretically equal likelihood chance that both the Democrat or Republican could win. Not really biased either direction. This is an open primary because incumbent Republican Representative Ed Royce is not seeking re-election. District 39, in case you're wondering where it's located in Southern California and includes parts of both Orange and Los Angeles counties. It includes the city of Fullerton and Yorba Linda. My grandmother used to live in this area. She actually used to live in this district, so I know this area very, very well, which is sad because if it goes blue, just knowing that it's been red for, you know, at least a little while, just shows just how much that area is changing there. Predicted trading actually shows Democrats are at 64 cents to flip the seat blue in November, so that is not good for Republicans there. But you know, again, since there is a actual predicted race up for this one, so again, we're gonna have both Republicans and Democrats mixed together here. Again, top 2 finishers move on. So the first candidate is Young Kim. Now, Young Kim is a Republican, who is a former California state representative. Young Kim is currently trading at 74 cents on Predicted. So, at least it looks like the Republican is trading the highest, and it's probably going to come in first place in this primary here. But in terms of the next candidate, currently trading in second place at 29 cents, is Democrat Gil Cisneros, which I wasn't really able to find out much about him. Or the third place person trading at 5 cents, Democrat Andy Thorburn. Couldn't really find much information about those two, but one of them is likely to also make the November ballot along with Republican Young Kim. There's also two more Republicans running that we're going to talk about here. Currently in fourth place trading is Republican Bob Huff, who is a former California state senator, also served as Senate Minority Leader for 4 years, is also the former mayor of Diamond Bar, California. So, at least he has a lot of political experience if he were to upset Young Kim for that. But currently trading in fifth place at 1 cent is Sean Nelson, Republican, who is currently on the Orange County Board of Supervisors. So those are your people that are running for House District 39. 2 are going to make it to the November ballot. Only one's going to continue. Hopefully it is Young Kim, because we need to keep that seat red. But the last primary race that we're going to talk about here in California is House District 49, which is also an open primary because incumbent Republican Representative Darrell Issa is not seeking re-election. This race has a CPVI of R+1, so although technically speaking Democrats would be favored to lose this district, Predicted actually is showing that Democrats are at 75 cents to flip this seat blue in November. If you're wondering where District 49 is located, it's located on the coast of California, north of San Diego and south of Orange County. So that kind of I-5 strip there along the edge is where that's currently located. But here's something you want to look at as to why Democrats think that they're going to be able to flip this district. When Darrell Issa won re-election, I'm not sure if he won re-election, but when he won in 2016, his margin of victory was 0.6%, just over half a point. Whereas Hillary Clinton's margin of victory in that district was 30 points. Yes, Clinton won the district by 30 points. The Republican representative only won by less than 1 point, barely over half a point. So very strong chance the Democrats will flip this seat. As I said, Predicted shows 75 cents they're probably going to do that. But just like the other race, again, you got Republicans and Democrats running in the same primary here. Trading in first place at 65 cents is Diane Harkey, who is a Republican and a former California state representative. In second place at 22 cents is Democrat Mike Levin. Could not find out much about him. In third place at 10 cents is Rocky Chavez, who is a current California state representative since 2012. In fourth place, trading at 8 cents, is Democrat Douglas Applegate, who was actually the Democrat nominee for this district race in 2016, but lost in the general election to Darrell Issa. So, or if you're a Democrat, you really want to pick some guy who might lose 2 years in a row if you're trying to flip that seat blue? Yeah, I didn't think so. But trading in fifth place at 6 cents is Democrat Sarah Jacobs. Couldn't really find anything else about her. So that finishes up California. We only have one more state to go here, and then I'm going to go over just a couple of stories here at the end, and then that'll be it for the show. So right now we're about an hour and 40-ish something minutes in, so a little bit longer me doing this by myself, but I really wanted to get through all these races here. Now, the final state that we're going to talk about today is New Jersey. Just a few things to go over here. So first things first is New Jersey does not have a governor race this year, so that saves time in doing that. They do, however, have a Senate race. And New Jersey has a CPVI of D+7, so, Democrats are pretty much going to win any race. However, on the Democrat side for the Senate, we have incumbent Democrat Bob Menendez, who, if you don't know who he has had a big scandal about corruption and stuff going around him, so it's really hurt his, he's really been hurting in the state of New Jersey there, which is part of the reason why Republicans think that they might have a chance in this race. I really don't think they do, but you never know. I'm actually going to talk more about Menendez after I finish New Jersey, so I'll just continue with the candidates here. So on the Republican side, there's two people running that are worth pointing out. First up is Brian Goldberg, who is a construction company executive. He ran for Senate in 2014, but lost in the Republican primary. And the other Republican running is Bob Hugin, or Huggin, Hugin. I think it's Hugin. He was a Trump delegate at the 2016 RNC. So, I would have to favor Bob Hugin because of that, at least. Whether he was bound by law or chose to be it, I'm not sure. But, either one of them, I just don't think that they have a chance of beating Bob Menendez as bad as Bob Menendez actually is. But that being said, that's it for the Senate race. Now, there are three House races in New Jersey that we want to look at. Two of them are open primaries. The first one that we're going to talk about here is an open primary, and that's House District 2, which has a CPVI of only R+1. So, slightly biased towards Republicans, but at the same time, Democrats think they're going to be able to flip it as well. It's an open primary because incumbent Republican Representative Frank LoBiondo is currently retiring, so he's not seeking re-election. Obama won the district twice, both in 2008 and 2012. Trump won the district by 4 points in 2016, but also in 2016, Republican Representative Frank LoBiondo won by 22 points. So again, more evidence that these Republicans outdid Trump doesn't necessarily mean that if Trump's doing bad, Republicans are going to do bad too. In fact, if Trump's doing better, it shows that Republicans are going to do even a lot more as well. It's the same thing with all these races that I've been talking about. Now, moving on here, we can talk about the Republicans that are running in this. Oh, actually, I should continue. District 2 is located in the southern portion of the state of New Jersey and includes the city of Atlantic City. So that's kind of where it's like almost the entire bottom fifth of the state, really, if you look up a map of it. It's a very big district in terms of how big that state actually is. Predicted shows Democrats at 76 cents to flip the seat blue in November, so this is probably something Republicans are going to lose. But on the Republican side, because it's currently Republican held and it has a CPVI of R+1, we're going to look at the Republican primary first. First up is Samuel Fiocchi. Samuel Fiocchi is a former New Mexico state representative, and couldn't really find anything else besides that. The other Republican running is Seth Grossman, who is an attorney and also a former community college professor. He ran for New Jersey governor in 2013, but lost in the primary. And the third person running on the Republican side is Hirsch Singh, who is an engineer, also ran for New Jersey governor in 2017, also lost in the primary. So we've got a couple of, governor primary losers here running for this district. So, I don't think we should be choosing losers of other people. So hopefully Samuel Fiocchi goes on to win the Republican primary there. There's no predicted race for this district right now. Just let y'all listening know. Again, if you made it this far in the show, thank you so much. But there are four people that we want to look at running on the Democrat side. First up is Will Cunningham, who used to work for U.S. Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey. So, again, someone I don't like. Someone who worked for him means someone I don't like as well. Second Democrat running is Nathan Kleinman, who ran for U.S. House of Representatives in Pennsylvania in 2012, but lost in the primary. He was also heavily involved in the Occupy movement, specifically the Occupy Philadelphia movement. So, again, there's someone who I definitely do not want to get anywhere near the United States House of Representatives. But the third Democrat running is Jeff Van Drew. Jeff Van Drew, from what I've heard, is actually probably going to be the one who ends up winning the Democrat race here. For various reasons, of which, it's kind of long and complicated and I'm not going to go into. But that being said, Jeff Van Drew is let me rephrase that. Jeff Van Drew is a New Jersey state senator and is also a former New Jersey state representative who also served as assistant majority leader. So he has a lot of experience in the New Jersey state legislature there. But the fourth Democrat running is a girl, or I should say woman, by the name of Tansy Youngblood. Tansy Youngblood, all I could find out is that she is a retired public school teacher. So, interesting there as well. Now, moving on to District 7. District 7 is a CPVI of R+3. Romney won District 7 by 7 in 2012. Clinton won it by 1 in 2016. But current Republican incumbent Representative Leonard Lance won it by 11. So even though it's a district Clinton won, Republicans still pulled off a pretty big victory here. But if you're wondering, District 7 is located in the northwestern part of New Jersey. Predicted shows Democrats are at 59 cents to flip this seat to be blue in November. So, definitely not the highest of chances. Essentially, it's a 60-40, which if you've been on Predicted a while, 60-40 can change in a heartbeat. But in the Republican primary, we have incumbent Representative Leonard Lance. his primary challenger is Rafat Barsoum, who is a physician. Who ran for New Jersey State Senate in 2013, but then lost in the general election there. So, looks like Leonard Lance is going to continue to go on and then be the Republican nominee in the general election in November. But on the Democrat side, we have three people running. First up is Peter Jacob, who is the 2016 Dem nominee in this race, but lost in the general election. He has also been endorsed by Justice Democrats in Our Revolution. So again, people who I do not want to see anywhere near the House. Another primary challenger for the Democrats is Guantam Joyce, who essentially is focusing his entire campaign on being the anti-Trump candidate. So again, someone who I don't want to see near the House at all. But the third Democrat running is Tom Malinowski, who worked in the Obama administration, is friends with John McCain, and also currently leads the Democrats in this race in fundraising. So, as much as I don't like the fact that he likes John McCain and worked in the Obama administration, he's a little better than the other two. So, if any Democrat is going to have to win that race, I would hope it'd be him. But that being said, that's all I have to say for District 7. Moving on to the final district that we're going to talk about today, and that is House District 11, which is an open primary because incumbent Republican Representative Rodney Frelinghuysen, so I have to kind of say that name slowly in order to pronounce it correctly, is retiring, so not seeking re-election. House District 11 is an R+3, so again, you would think it would be favored towards Republicans. However, predicted trading markets do show that Democrats are at 75 cents to flip that seat to be blue in November. So, not a good chance, not looking good for Republicans there as well. But Trump won District 11 by less than 1 point, whereas both Romney and McCain won it by 5 points each. Frelinghuysen, God, I want to say that name correctly. He won in 2016 by 19 points. So he was extremely popular there. That being said, are Republicans able to pull it off again? It will have to wait to be seen. But if in case you're wondering where District 11 is, it's located in the northern part of the state, northwest of the city of Newark, and west of the city of Paterson, New Jersey. So that's a kind of, that general-ish area is where this is located. I couldn't really find much information for any of the candidates except for just a couple here. So it's a good chance that someone who I'm not about to mention actually goes on and win one of these races for either the Democrat primary or the Republican primary. So take this last race here with a grain of salt. Part of the reason why I saved it for last. But one of the Republicans running is Jay Weber, who is a New Jersey state representative. And one of the Democrats running is Mikey Sherrill, who has been endorsed by the Giffords PAC. Again, Gabby Giffords, as we said earlier, the former representative from Arizona who got shot. He also currently, Mickey here, or maybe it's a she, I don't know, either way, Mickey Sherrill leads the Democrats in fundraising. So it's probably going to be Mickey Sherrill versus maybe Jay Weber. But again, I couldn't really find any information about those people, so I just don't know. That being said, that's all the primary updates that we want to go over, and there's two final things that I want to talk here about before we end the show real quick. I know we're approaching the 2-hour mark. We might actually be there, almost there already. I want to try to keep it on 2 hours here. So first things first is what I talked about earlier out of the New Jersey race, and I just want to focus on the New Jersey race, the Senate race that is, for just a second, because there's a new poll by Farley Dickinson University, which shows that Democrat New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez is only leading his Republican challenger, generic Republican challenger, by 4 points. Okay? 4 points. That's a state that Hillary Clinton won easily, and part of the reason why Republicans think they actually have a chance is because this poll shows them within 4 points. However, the poll also shows that 42% of people remain undecided, which is, absurdly high for a poll like this, especially since other polls by Monmouth University and Quinnipiac have Menendez up by 21 points and 17 points respectively. So, this poll shows it being close. The other ones show it not exactly being close at all. The good news for Republicans is that a May poll by Rutgers University showed that Menendez's approval rating in the state sits at only 22%. So if you're able to actually pull that off, that would be a good starting point. It's the fact that most people, barely over 1 in 5, actually like the guy in New Jersey. So bad news for Bob Menendez, good news for Republicans. Can they capitalize? We'll see. And the last thing of the show today, thank you so much for listening so far. The last thing that we want to talk about is a new poll showing how much Ted Cruz is actually beating Beto O'Rourke in the Texas Senate race. So, a new Quinnipiac University poll shows Ted Cruz is beating Beto O'Rourke, his Democrat challenger, by 11 points for the Texas Senate race, 50-39. The poll shows Cruz widening the spread from a previous Quinnipiac poll, which had Cruz up only 3 points in mid-April at 47-44. A lot of this can be attributed to the fact that Beto O'Rourke is no longer making rounds on the TV, so he's not, being plastered everywhere, which kind of brought up his popularity. And also, Republicans in general have been having a really good couple of months here, so, it's understandable why they'd be starting to go back up again. And that kind of translates to all races in general. Now, Cruz has a 22-point lead among men and a 2-point lead among women. Previously, Cruz was up 11 with men, and O'Rourke was actually up 4 points with women. So you've seen quite a big swing there as well. In terms of the racial breakdown, Cruz is up 2 points with Hispanics, is up 34% with whites, and O'Rourke is up 55% with blacks. Now, bad news for O'Rourke is nearly half of voters said they haven't heard enough about O'Rourke in order to form an opinion. So, when you're trying to run for Senate in Texas against one of the most popular Republican politicians in the country right now, Ted Cruz, one of the most popular Republican politicians in the state, it's not good when you're, already this far into the primary process, past the primary actually. Texas is getting ready for the general. We've already had our primary, and half of people still haven't even heard of you in order to form an opinion. Not good, Beto O'Rourke. Not good. But continuing on, they also said that out of those polls, the number of self-identifying Republicans increased from 31% in mid-April to 34% in the new poll. So, more people identifying as Republican, also part of the reason why why those numbers shot up for Republicans as well. The poll also has some numbers for Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Since this show is based out of Texas, we do tend to like Texas and follow Texas politics. But the poll shows that Texas Greg Abbott has a 19-point lead over Lupe Valdez, his Democrat challenger, 53-34. Abbott is currently up 3%. Abbott is currently up 30 with men and up 8 with women. Valdez is only up 4%. Excuse me. Is only up 4 with Hispanics. So, that's not translating good when Hispanics are 40% of your state and you're the Democrat who normally gets Hispanic vote and you're only up 4%. So, not good right there for her. So, Greg Abbott in 2014, he won by 20 points. I predicted that this race is going to be at least a 15-point win for him right now. The polling currently shows that, so everything is falling right in line. Finally, however, the poll shows that Trump's approval rating and disapproval rating in the state of Texas are currently tied at 47%. This is up from 52% disapproval and 43% approval in mid-April. Again, I've been saying this time and time again. The reason Trump did bad in Texas is because he's unpopular in Texas. Other Republicans across the country individually are a lot more popular than Trump is as Republicans. So just because Trump is doing bad, that doesn't necessarily translate into bad news for individual Republicans, especially since Trump's, his approval ratings are going up and, just Republicans in general having, a lot of good things happening on their side. But you know what? That's the end of the show. Thank you so much for everyone who's actually made it this far listening. I really, really do appreciate it. Hopefully Enzo will be able to be back on the show next week. I know he's just really, really busy this week, so he wasn't able to make it. But that being said, thank you for listening to Trump Public Radio, and goodbye.